And we were on vacation, and all she wanted on vacation was to see dolphins and then to swim with them. It's like all she wanted. And so we had this experience. We're like kind of totally out of the blue. We were just on our way to lunch. We're on this little boat, and all of a sudden there's these dolphins. And she flies out of the boat. She's like kind of a nervous person. I did not expect her to throw herself out of a moving boat to a bunch of dolphins, but she did, which was awesome. And it was like a major life moment for her. And when she got back on the boat, we had the little video camera out, and she said, "This is so amazing. I'm jealous of myself." And so now we always say when something like really wonderful is happening, "I'm jealous of myself." And I have to tell you, I am so thankful to be here this morning. I'm on Chicago time, so I slept in super, super late till 7, and got up and went down to the beach and was just watching the water and kids running around and dogs. And I just thought, like, oh, I'm jealous of myself. This is amazing. I know, how many of you have been here before? Most of you. Okay, I'm like wandering around, like, look, a yurt. Look, I think it's so cool. So, I just drove my husband crazy on the phone this morning, and because he's home with our children, with our 5-year-old and our 1-year-old, and I'm like, "Hi, how are you? Can you hear the water? It's the ocean right in the background." He's like, "Really? Can you hear our child screaming from his car seat?" Yeah. I'm like, "Oh, he's so cute," and he's like, "Really?" He had to take them both to Chuck E. Cheese last night. Which is fine. My 5-year-old, that's like totally fine. Like, he just runs around, he plays games, it's totally fine. A 1-year-old at Chuck E. Cheese, there's like tokens in the mouth. It's just so gross. So he was delighted to hear from me this morning. Like, "I'm having the most awesome time." He did not appreciate it very much. But that's the thing. He's a worship leader and a musician, and so when I'm traveling, he is home with our kids, and when he's traveling, I'm home with the kids, and so we totally have those conversations. He's, and he travels a little more internationally. I don't, kind of in this season with a baby, and so he's like, "I'm in Bethlehem," and I'm like, "Really? A, it's 4 a.m. B, our baby is wide awake, so don't tell me about the nativity right now." But it's a fun way to live, but it means we frequently find ourselves jealous of the other, which is fine. So today we're going to do it's going to be a little bit different than last night. I'm going to talk with you a little bit, share a couple ideas, and then we're going to take a little bit of time for Q&A. Frankly, that's kind of my favorite part. My preference would be that this would be one big conversation as opposed to a presentation. I wish that it was more like we were sitting together over coffee than I was standing here with a microphone. So anything that we talk about today or that we talked about last night or just assorted things that you would like to talk about, we'll take some questions. And then Aaron and Carrie are going to come back up and lead us in a couple songs. And then tell me if I'm getting this right. Now, it may be that I get this right or completely not right. And then when they are finished, we are all going to leave silently and spend about 45 minutes totally alone. And that's why you needed meeting places for your small groups, because we're all going to leave while they're playing, kind of scatter ourselves, spend some time alone, and then get together with our groups. Does that make sense? Okay, great. Let me pray for us, and then we'll dive in. God, thank you for the extraordinary beauty of the world that you created. There was no reason, no logical reason for you to create a world with so much just egregious, over-the-top beauty. But because you're a creator and because you love beauty, you did, and we're so thankful that we get to experience that, especially in a place like this today. I pray that you would help each of us to be present, to let go of perfection, distraction, competition, comparison, to leave those things to the side for a while and to be totally present in the extraordinary world that you created, to listen to your voice as you're speaking and whispering through the beauty of these hills and the beauty of the water and through the faces of people that we love and are walking with. It's a gift to be walking in this world, and we don't take it for granted. It's in your name that we pray. Amen. So today we're going to talk essentially about what it means to be present and what it means to care well for ourselves, to let ourselves rest and to give ourselves a break. I generally find that I learn through writing. And so when I look back at the stuff I've been writing, I can tell what are the lessons I needed to learn along the way. And so last night we talked about friendship, and I told you this. the core of what God has been teaching me is the extraordinary transforming power of friendship. I would say that's been maybe like a 6-year thing in my life. The last 6 years have been heavily marked by the friendships that I have with other women. I would say the more recent thing that he is teaching me, probably in kind of fits and starts, but certainly the focus of my last, say like 6 or 8 months, so I'm kind of right in the middle of it right now, is about what it means to rest, to practice a sense of enough, having done enough, having tried hard enough, giving yourself the luxury and the gift to be done, to rest, to practice Sabbath. A friend of mine says that Sabbath is when we practice the belief that God didn't need us working so hard all the time anyway, that he's actually in control and we are not, and Sabbath is a really extraordinary way to practice that belief. And so I'm going to share with you 3 sections kind of just about my own journey along that path, and both in your alone time and then in your small group time. Just want you to think through, write through, talk through. What does it mean to decide what you're going to do and what you're not going to do? What does it mean to choose to be present even though things are not perfect? What does it mean to cultivate a lifestyle of silence? And I will just tell you, before I get started in the first chapter, a lot of times when someone wants to talk to me about like rest and contemplation and Sabbath, they're like kind of that kind of person anyway. Like my mom is amazing. She's a wonderful person, but she's like a Sabbath and contemplative person by nature. So when she talks to me, I'm like, you don't even leave your house a lot of the time. Like, she's totally an introvert. She's a poet. She likes to walk on the beach. Like, of course you practice Sabbath. That's like your thing. And so it's kind of hard for me. So I tell myself, like, I'm just not really that kind of person. I'm not really like a Sabbathy, resty, boundaries, sleeping person. It's like not my thing. My thing is like kind of getting stuff done, like and going and having fun, and what I'm realizing is that belief about myself is it's not helping me. It's not doing me any favors. And so I'm not talking with you as an expert on rest and Sabbath. I'm talking to you as a fellow traveler along that road, and I really want to learn it too. It's not in my nature. I'm naturally a go faster, get it done, keep going, stay out late, push it a little harder person. But it has stopped working for me, especially in the last year. It has corroded important parts of my life and soul and relationships and spirit. And so I have to find a new way, and I'm very committed to doing that. And like anything, when you discover something, you think like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Do you know what I do? Sometimes, like once a week, I intentionally rest. It's like my thing. I think I invented it. And it's totally changing my life. And then you realize, oh, that's like actually from the Bible. That's what God designed us for like several thousand years ago. And I think that's just like everything. When you stumble upon it, it like blows your mind. And then you realize that smart people have been doing it forever. So many of you may be a lot further along this road than I am, but I find that a lot of us need like a recalibration every couple seasons when your life changes. You know, for me, the switch from 1 child to 2 is harder. You know, there's twice as many of them. That's how that math works. A friend of mine said that 1 is like none and 2 is like 10. And most days I don't think that, and every once in a while I'm like, 10, ah! So this first section is a very practical one called Things I Don't Do. A few years ago, at the very end of my frantic 20s, I was working more than full time, all the while pricked with invisible needles of dissatisfaction, waking up in the night longing to write, buzzing through the days on coffee and adrenaline, wearing clothes that should have been taken to the dry cleaner 6 wearings ago. I was trying to think about becoming a mother. I knew it would change everything, but I couldn't picture it because no one ever can. I couldn't see a way through to another way of living, but I knew that there must be one. I saw women who were older than me, who did work they believed in and parented well, and most surprisingly, didn't seem so frantically and chronically unkempt. I wanted what they had, and I had no idea how to get it. I love the illusion of being able to do it all. And I'm fascinated with people who seem to do that, who have challenging careers and beautiful homes and vibrant minds and well-tended abs. Throw in polite children and a garden, and I'm coming over for lessons. Out to lunch one day with my friend Denise, I asked her about it. Denise is a mother of 4 and a grandmother, and she works and writes and travels and cooks. And most important to me, she seems settled in some fundamental way. There's something that she knows about herself that I didn't yet know about myself, certainly. We were at the Blue Water Grill on a lake, and I asked her all about it, and this is what Denise told me. She said, it's not hard to decide what you want your life to be about. What's hard, she said, is figuring out what you're willing to give up in order to do the things you really care about. It's not hard to decide what you want your life to be about. What's hard is figuring out what you're willing to give up in order to do the things you really care about. I'm a list keeper. I always have a to-do list. And it ranges from the mundane, go to the dry cleaner, go to the post office, buy batteries, to the far-reaching, stop eating Henry's leftover Dino Bites, get over yourself, forgive nasty reviewer, wear more jewelry. At one point, I kept adding to the list. This is neither here nor there, but I have extremely large hands. Now you're going to notice it. They're like super big man hands. And I get really self-conscious that if I don't get my nails done or wear rings, if someone meets me and they just see my hand, they'll think I'm a man. And they'll be like, oh, it's a girl with a man hand. So, so one of my goals was if I wore more rings, then I would tip them off. Look, I'm a lady, you know. But clearly I didn't, and I don't have my nails done, and I'm only wearing one ring. Anyway. So at one point, I kept adding and adding to the to-do list, more and more items, more and more sweeping in their scope, until I added this line, do everything better. It was, at the time, a pretty appropriate way to capture how I felt about my life and myself fairly often. It also explains why I tended to get so tired I'd cry without knowing why my life sometimes felt like I was running on a hamster wheel, and why I searched the faces of calmer, more grounded women for a secret that they knew that I didn't. Do everything better. Each of these three words has a particular flavor of poison all its own. We know better than do, of course. We know that words like be and become and try are a little less crushing and cruel, spiritually and psychologically, a little friendlier to the soul. But when we're alone sometimes and the list is getting the best of us, we abandon all those sweet ideas and we go straight to do, because do is power, push, aggression, plain old sweat equity. It's not pretty, but we know that do gets the job done. Everything is just a killer. Everything is the heart of the conversation for me, my particular drug of choice. Sure, I can host that party. Of course, I can bring that meal. Yes, I'd love to write that article. Yes to everything. This winter, I got the kind of tired that you can't recover from, almost like something gets altered on a cellular level. You begin to fantasize about what it would like to just not be tired anymore. You stop thinking about money or men or the Italian Riviera, and all you daydream about is not feeling exhausted, about neck muscles that don't throb, about a mind that isn't fogged every single day. I was complaining about being tired, but also bringing up the fact that lots of women travel and work and have kids. Everybody has a house to clean. Why can't I pull it together? My husband said gently, ostensibly helpfully, something along the lines of, you know, honey, just because some other people can do all that, it doesn't mean that you can or you have to. Maybe it's just too much for you. One tiny, almost imperceptible beat of silence, and then I yelled, viscerally from the depths of my soul, as though possessed, I'm not weak. And as soon as the words came out, we looked at each other in alarm. It seemed perhaps we'd hit upon the heart of something. One of my core fears, and maybe yours, is that someone would think I can't handle as much as the next person. It's fundamental to my understanding of myself for me to be the strong one, the capable one, the busy one, the one who can bail you out, not make a fuss, bring a meal, add a few more things to the list. For me, everything becomes a lifestyle. Everything is an addiction. And then better. Better is a seductress. It's so delicious to run after better, better, better. Better is what keeps some women decorating and redecorating the same house for years on end, because the time you get the last detail of the finished basement home theater just right, your countertops are ever so slightly outdated, and so you begin again. Better is what makes us go to a spin class, or maybe 2 or 3 today, just for good measure. Better is what makes us get just a little work done after the last baby, to look a little bit fresher and more well-rested. Better is a force. The three together, do everything better, are a supercharged triple threat, capturing in 3 words the mania of modern life, the anti-spirit, anti-spiritual, soul-shriveling garbage that infects and compromises our lives. Denise was right. Deciding what I wanted wasn't that hard, but deciding what I was willing to give up for those things is like yoga for your superego. Stretching and pushing and ultimately healing the nasty little person inside of you who exists only for what other people think. Things I do. Above all else, I try to keep my faith in Christ at the very center of my life, the heart and source of everything. I trust God's voice as my guide and Christ as my comforter. I pray, I practice confession and forgiveness, and I seek to see the world through the eyes of its creator, believing that everything can be redeemed. I'm a part of my church community, volunteering on its behalf, working to make a better city and a better world because of our church community. Also, I do everything I can to make my marriage a deeply connected partnership. I work hard at being a good partner to Aaron, to walk with him and hear him and learn with him. I give the best of my days to raise my sons. For the record, though, I did not and do not do very many of those super achiever mom things like making baby food from scratch. I think the baby food people are doing a very nice job making baby food, and I buy it at Target. I work hard to become a better writer with each page. I live in daily, honest community with a small group of people. Our house is a place of celebration and comfort for people we love. And then there are a few things that I do just for being a person in America who doesn't have a personal assistant and is not, say, the president. This list includes, but is not limited to, trips to the DMV, laundry folding, diaper buying, and occasional flossing. Even if I did have a personal assistant, I would stipulate that I still do my own flossing because I am just that grounded. So those are the things that I do. I come back to it regularly. The first list was easy, and then came the hard part. What am I willing to not do in order to do the things that I believe in? Silence, blank paper, more silence. Finally, a few things came to mind. Things I don't do. I don't garden. Our landscaping in Grand Rapids was so bad that our neighbor Becky came over of her own accord and dug out all our beds, partially because she's a wonderful person and partially because 5 years of driving past the wreckage of our front yard nearly drove her to the brink of insanity. I've been feeling like sort of a loser because I don't garden. I have friends who garden. They talk a lot about the spiritual implications of new life springing from the earth, the deep communion with God that they experience as they lovingly tend to their herbs and flowers. But I'm going to have to miss out on that because, at least for now, no gardening. I don't do major home improvement projects or scour flea markets and antique shops for the perfect home accessories. No expectations for perfect housekeeping either. I try for clean countertops and no horrible smells, and beyond that, it's pretty rough. At our house, home improvement involves clearing off the coffee table every few days and loading and unloading the dishwasher. Also, I don't always change my clothes just because I'm leaving the house. I wear yoga pants 99% of the time, and I pretend that other people don't notice I'm wearing my pajamas in public. I don't make our bed in the morning, standing firm on the adolescent belief that there's no sense in doing something you're just going to undo at the end of the day. Scrapbooking and photo album making are both on my list, although I do take a lot of pictures of my kids on my phone. I only blow dry my hair on special occasions, and my fingernails haven't been painted since the 90s. There's only so much time. I don't spend time with people who routinely make me feel like less than I am, or who spend most of their time talking about what's wrong with everyone else, or who spend a lot of time talking about other people's money. So that's my list. It's brutal talking about the things that I don't do, especially for someone like me who refuses most of the time to acknowledge that there is, in fact, a limit to the amount of things I can get done. But I've discovered that the list sets me free. I have it written in black and white, sitting on my desk, and when I'm tempted to go rogue and start gardening because all the other moms do, I come back to both lists and I remind myself about the important things. That time is finite, as is energy. That one day I'll stand before God and account for what I did with my life. There is work that is only mine to do, children that are only ours to raise, stories that are mine to tell, friends that are mine to walk with. The grandest seduction of all is the myth that doing everything better gets us where we want to be. It gets us somewhere, certainly, but not anywhere worth being. Later, you're going to have some time to go through that, to make your own list. And I really would encourage you to do it and to actually write it down and then to share it, both with your small group and when you get home, either with your roommates or your husband. Sometimes we find that we get really excited to make these like big, new, bold choices in our lives, but we don't let the people in our lives in on those changes. And then we get frustrated when they don't understand kind of the new us. And I think it's really important to invite the people in our lives into this process together. And one thing I would say about that list of things you don't do, I think it's really helpful to think of it just for a season, either for this year or for these couple years or while my kids are these ages. Those things will shift, and I think especially in a woman's life, I think, men's lives do have some ebbs and flows, but women's lives especially look so different depending on what season you're in, and to let yourself focus on exactly what you have and don't have for this particular season, knowing that there are other things. One thing, and this is just a tiny example, but one of the things that I didn't mention in here is one thing that's always been on my list is that I don't bake. I just don't. I love to cook. Bread and Wine, this book that I'm working on, is all about cooking and recipes, but I'm not a baker. Like, I'm just not good at it. There's a lot of math. I don't like it. So several years ago when I wrote Bittersweet, this was like my policy. I don't bake. And then this fall, I started baking bread, and I love it, and it's like my new thing, and it makes me feel like I've cracked the code of the universe, because you mix together flour and water, and then you make bread. And there's a season for everything. There was a season when baking just didn't fit, when my life and my lifestyle and my schedule, and then there was a season where it feels like a really good thing. So I think to give yourself a season. There are things that can happen in your life just for this season, and never again. And then there are things that are going to be on hold for a while, but life is so long. And you have so much time. And it's so seductive to believe that it all has to happen right now. What I'm finding along the way is that there are things that I can do well right now. And there are a whole lot of other things that are on hold for another season. One thing we'll talk about, I think, tonight, my mom is a great example of that. I'm 36 and she's 60. And she is living out the most extraordinary, exciting, she's an activist, she's a traveler, she's a writer. She is getting to live this incredibly global, exciting, meaningful life that she was not living when she was 36. When she was 36, she was home with my brother and I. She was writing. She was tiptoeing into this, these communities of activism, and she was learning about it. But it's so helpful for me to think about what is required and what is best for this season that I'm in right now. And then what's going to be best in 10 years and what's going to be best 10 years after that. So you'll have a chance to kind of think through it. I really think it's helpful. A friend of mine on her list is, I don't put much energy into my kids being super stylish. She's like, I'm just not going to do it. I have little boys. As long as their clothes are vaguely clean and there's, covered, that's it. That's all I care about. Because I don't have the energy to order everything online from Sweden and then try to get it on their little bodies when they're just going to roll around in the dirt anyway. So I don't do it. I don't worry about it. And I think that's a really great thing if you just kind of identify in your life, what are the things that I just don't care about for this season? I think you'll find that those things can set you free. So I'm going to read one now that's new. I don't think I've actually read this for anyone. My dad, I read it for my dad. This is called Swimming in Silence. Mid-February, which in Chicago is about the time you begin despairing that you will ever be warm again, Ryan and Emily invited us to join them in Mexico. 7 adults, 5 kids, a swimming pool right at the house. What could be lovelier? Nothing, says this Chicagoan. Absolutely nothing. We left early on a Wednesday morning. I got our flight's departure time wrong, so the morning was a fire drill, flinging things into the car, pleading with the women at the ticket counter to let us jump the line. We arrived at the gate miraculously and met our friends there, hugging and juggling babies. As the plane descended, we looked out into the mountains and the desert as far as you can see, and then all at once the ocean, navy and severe. We went to bed early most nights, and the evenings settled into a loose routine of baths for kids, dinner for kids, bedtime for kids, and then dinner for us. Oftentimes, by the time dinner for us came around, we nibbled a few bites of whatever and wandered to bed, tired from the sun and the kids and the swimming. One clear day, we had fish tacos and buckets of beer overlooking the boats down at the marina. Another hot, cloudless morning, we went whale watching, and the sight of their huge, slippery bodies cutting the surface of the sea never failed to amaze us. Some friends recommended an organic farmer's market, so we set out one morning to find it. We were given various sets of confusing, inaccurate, and downright wrong directions that took us all over town, to a flea market, a grocery store, a church, and both ends of the marina, till we finally flagged down a couple with a shopping bag who directed us very specifically to a residential neighborhood in the hills above the marina, across the parking lot, past a house with a pit bull and a hot tub in an old Cadillac. For real, a pit bull and a hot tub in an old Cadillac. The kids were hot and dusty, and we were tired of dragging them around, so when it turned out that the vegetable market was held in the courtyard of a juice bar and cafe, we claimed the biggest table and settled in happily for cucumber grapefruit juice and almond coconut muffins and lattes. We bought loaves of crusty round bread and granola, tamales and poblano crema, and absolutely fantastic tuna. As is always the case at farmers markets, I intend to buy herbs and lettuces and leave with baked goods and cheese. But such is life. And soap and blankets. I never buy like anything green, it's terrible. But such is life, and certainly such is vacation. In the mornings, we tiptoed around, hoping everyone else's kids were still sleeping. I'd slip upstairs to start the coffee and bring down breakfast in bed, slicing a dense loaf of market bread, setting out a pat of butter under a stainless bowl, warming almond milk to pour into a dark, fragrant Mexican coffee, day breaking slowly and quietly. When we arrived in Mexico, we realized that our phones didn't work unless we wanted to pay a fortune in data roaming charges, and my email didn't work on the desktop at the house. What that meant is that I checked my email on my phone every morning for a few costly minutes just to see if anything pressing had come up. But other than that, we did things the old-fashioned way. We left each other notes and set meeting places. Sometimes we missed each other, but there was something absolutely fantastic about saying things like, "I'll see you when I get back." Or, "They went for a walk and maybe they'll be back in an hour." No constant texts, no calls back and forth from the grocery store, no check-in about whether or not the baby's still sleeping. Beyond that, no Twitter, no Facebook, no blog reading. After several weeks in a coffee shop with a laptop, hyper-connected all the time, the silence of Mexico and my useless phone felt cavernous. I felt a little jumpy, like something really major might be happening and I might miss it. But as time went on, I realized that the really major things were happening all around me, and that more often than not, I had been missing them, because my phone had become an extension of my hand. And what it said to people, essentially, is that just being with them isn't enough. This view of the ocean, not enough. Your story, not enough. I'm not anti-technology, of course, but what I realized that week is that in the world that we live in now, vacation isn't always about a change of venue. We travel a lot, both for fun and for work, and we love it, but we always have phones, laptops, iPads. No matter where we are, we're just as connected as we are at home, sometimes more so because we have more time. And like more and more people, I think, we don't work in offices or conventional workplaces where there are hours that you're working and hours that you're not. There are so many good things that go with that: flexibility, freedom, lots of time with our kids. At the same time, though, we've realized that it means we're sort of working all the time. Aaron will get out of bed to run down to the studio to listen to a mix a producer sends him. I get emails about upcoming events when I'm nursing or at a museum or watching Henry's soccer practice. The best thing about blending all those boundaries is also the worst part about blending all those boundaries. We're always connected to everyone all the time. While I'm face-to-face with my grandmother, my phone is vibrating with Facebook comments or emails from J.Crew or pending invitations from LinkedIn. When I'm in Dallas, I'm texting a friend in Reno and answering a question for my editor in Eugene and sending a photo to my mother-in-law at home. And that's good for lots of reasons. But what I found in Mexico is that being everywhere was keeping me from being anywhere, one very particular place. So all of a sudden, that silence, that blessed, glorious, strange silence, let me be completely in one place. I was totally there, totally in it, without feeling like my mind was divided into 1,000 small splinters, spinning out all over the world, leaving nothing but a glassy stare and twitchy fingers always reaching for my phone. The week in Mexico was amazing. I mean, of course it was. The wide, glittering sea everywhere you look, babies and kids swimming in tacos and limes and laughter and people we love. But it was magical on a deeper level, too, because it created in me an appetite for silence that I haven't tasted for years, possibly. It was like going on a juice fast for your brain. And as much as you're starving, you feel strong and whole and healthy and clear for the first time in a long time. It was unnatural, and I liked it. And I think back to that week often about how non-fragmented my brain and spirit felt, how little I missed on Pinterest and Facebook, how valuable it is to live the life in front of you regardless of how tempting it is to press your face up against the glass of other people's lives online, even though that's so much safer and so entirely addictive. It could have been the ocean, the Pacific, and the Sea of Cortez coming together right at the southernmost point, navy and deep, whales breaching, and sleek sport fishers zigzagging the coastline. It may have been the warmth of the sun in the midday and the soft coolness of morning and night. It may have been the sounds of our children in the pool yelping and splashing. It may have been the seared tuna over rice and poblano crema, or the heavy, almost bitter lattes that we drank in the morning in leather rocking chairs while the sun climbed silently. It could have been any of those things. But I do believe what made this trip feel more deeply restful than any in recent memories, that it was truly quiet. That the constant chatter and conversation and mental clutter we create with Twitter and Facebook and Pinterest and blogs was for 1 week blessedly silent. I'm responsible for both creating and consuming all that clutter and noise. I'm a noise person, both literally and figuratively. I'm kind of the ultimate multitasker. TV on, magazine open, fridge open, kids chattering, texting one friend, emailing another. All the while, I've got something in the microwave, something else bubbling on the stove. My mom is stopping over and the dryer is buzzing, and that's just how I like it. But all of a sudden on this trip, there was no noise. There was no other conversation to be a part of. Nothing that the chefs and writers I follow mattered. Nothing happening in the lives of my friends from high school or college or Grand Rapids to overshadow or overtake what we were doing. And largely what we were doing is nothing, in the best possible way. After a few days, I realized how much I liked it, how much the silence sounded like music, and how much better I liked my own life. It's easier, of course, to let yourself be totally present when you're looking out in the ocean or scanning the shoreline for whales, and admittedly when your phone doesn't work anyway. It's a lot harder when you're at home again, with the kids again, when they're not napping again, when they're watching backyardigans again. I'll do almost anything to not be completely present when I'm surrounded by laundry and the baby won't nap. I don't want to be even partially present when I'm staring down a deadline, shoulder muscles clenched, caffeine making me both blurred and twitchy. We fragment our minds for a reason, of course, because we like the idea of being 67 other places besides the one lame, lonely place we find ourselves on some days. But when I think back to Mexico, I force myself to set down my phone for a while, and I trust that some of what made that time so magical had nothing to do with the lime and the cilantro and the whales, and everything to do with the willingness to be entirely there. I practiced since that trip being entirely where I am, glamorous or not. And what I find is that it's better to be in one place, wholly and full-heartedly, than 1,000 other splintery half places, glamorous as they may be. And I think certainly you all have an invitation to experience that here. In some ways, you're so away, it's so beautiful, it's so simple, but I know you're not far from home. And I know you're probably thinking like I am about my son's soccer schedule and whether or not my husband remembered shin guards. And it would be so tempting to stay there, to stay in 1,000 other worlds, even though my body is here. And I would love to encourage you to practice being present here and then take that practice home in tiny little bits. At least that's what I'm trying to do. So the last thing I'm going to read, and then I'm going to take some questions. This is a piece that I actually wrote kind of completely out of desperation. Someone gave me great writing advice at a certain point, and I really take it very seriously. Whenever you think that you need to write, like, oh, you know who really, someone really needs to hear this. You know who would really benefit from this? That person. That writing will always be terrible. But when you write as though you are trying to heal yourself, as though you are trying to encourage yourself to grow, as though you are trying to challenge yourself like a best friend, that's when you'll end up really being able to tell the truth about what's important. And so I wrote this for myself at Christmas. And then I modified it during the spring. I told you that I'm kind of on this, like, you know, this last spring I've been trying to learn about presence and peace and stillness. So I modified this piece because I really needed to hang on to it. I had a super crazy spring season, and the baby wasn't sleeping, and I had all this travel, and I really found myself quite fragmented and worn down. And then I thought, oh, I'm so glad I'm in the clear. And then back to school season started. And this is our first time in the actual big boy school system. I think it would be easier to get my son into the CIA than into kindergarten. It was like the paper trail was just absolutely absurd. I felt like there was some sort of Da Vinci Code thing happening. Right? I could not figure out all the papers. And so I had to modify this piece for fall. But now, you know, everybody's settled and in school, and at least at our house, at Macy's at our house, it's completely fully Christmas already. And so I'm going to read this to you, and it's about Christmas, but it's really about any of those times in our lives when we feel like the external forces and the external pace is starting to pick up, and I feel quite easily like I don't have a choice. I just have to go along with it. I just have to get carried down that river. Things are bonkers, and I'm just going to go with it, and then I'll clean it all up later. I will slow down later. I will make sense of my life and my choices and my disciplines later, but I cannot be expected to do that right now. I do that at Christmas, and it goes poorly. And then I do it in the springtime, and it goes poorly. And then I do it at back to school time, and it goes poorly. And what I'm realizing is this is about my life, and it's about my choices, and it's about being the kind of person that says, the world I live in doesn't get to tell me how I live. It doesn't get to impress upon me its own pace, its own values. For those of us who are followers of Christ, we respond to a different set of values. Built and planted inside of us is a different set of values and priorities. It's very easy for me to listen to these voices as opposed to the voice of the Spirit inside of me, but daily, kind of that's my work. And so this is called present over perfect. Here we are, Christmas time. Our week is full to bursting with family parties and gathering with friends. Preschool Christmas programs and coffee dates with out-of-town friends just here for the holidays. Our gifts are mostly purchased, but mostly not wrapped. And our laundry situation after a busy weekend is dire. It's ironic, of course, that during Christmas we find ourselves most tempted to abandon Christ-likeness in favor of overspending, overdoing, and overconsuming, but I find it to be true. The season that centers around the silent night, the holy night, the simple baby, and the star, very quickly becomes the season in which we over everything. Overspend, overeat, overindulge, overcommit, all in the name of celebration. I fall into it every year, and I fell even a little bit deeper than in previous years because we had a newborn, because my husband was a part of the Christmas services at our church, which meant he was out almost every night in December for rehearsals and programs. And because I agreed to speak at several events in Atlanta and Dallas, even though it meant bringing a 9-week-old with me, and I couldn't fit into any of my pants. When I officiate a wedding, I like a couple times a year I officiate a wedding. It's totally my favorite thing. Like, I super love it. When I officiate a wedding, I usually meet with the bride and groom about a week out. There are a few pieces of advice that I always give. The first is that from this point on, nothing can get added to the wedding to-do list. Things can only get taken off, either completed or abandoned, but nothing gets added. No last-minute project, no stroke of genius DIY thing you see on Pinterest. If it's not already on the list, no matter how charming, adding it will only make you crazy. And then I tell them that while they cannot add anything to their list, I can, in fact, add 2 very important things to their list. First, a no wedding talk date. Second, rest, whatever that means. Sleep, an unscheduled hour, a walk, a bath. They always look at me like I'm nuts. I can see them thinking, we are up to our ears in seating charts and programs to assemble and family drama to mitigate, and you want us to go on a date and then take a nap? Actually, yes. Because what will make their wedding day perfect is not the flowers or the favors, but a bride and a groom who are happy, contented, present, and patient. The same is true at Christmas. I can show up with my perfectly wrapped grab bag gift and my perfectly baked cookies and my perfectly resentful and frazzled self, ready to snap at the first family member who looks at me wrong. Or I can choose to rest my body and nourish my spirit, knowing that bringing a grounded, present self to each holiday gathering is more important than the gifts that I bring. So this is what I'm doing in this season. I'm adding nothing to the to-do list. I'm abandoning well-intentioned but time-consuming projects, and in their place, I'm making rest and space priorities, so that what I offer to my family is more than a brittle mask over a wound-up and depleted soul. My intention for this season is present over perfect. I feel like every day this week I was given an opportunity to live this out. A new friend invited me to a cookie exchange, and the only night Aaron would be home until Christmas. We didn't have plans per se, but I had a sense that what we needed was to be home together. And so I said no, which is so hard for me. And our little family did approximately nothing, which was just exactly what we needed. I co-hosted a party the next night, and one of the things that I brought was frozen meatballs. I love to cook, and I was planning, of course, to make them from scratch, but it was too much for me, too much time and too much energy that I didn't have in this season. And of course no one cared. That's the lesson in this for people like me who sometimes get wound up about doing things perfectly. 90% of the people in your life won't know the difference between fresh and frozen or handmade and store-bought. And the 10% who do are just as stressed out as you are. And your willingness to choose simplicity just might set them free to do the same. My friends from high school always get together at this time of year, and in the last several years, we've started a tradition of building gingerbread houses with all our kids. It's terrible. It's just an awful thing. They're too little. They eat all the frosting. It gets everywhere, but it's like an important tradition. So this year, 2 of us had sick kids. I have a newborn. One is working full-time in a new position. One is literally 9 months pregnant. As the emails swirled around about a date for this year, finally Courtney said, I love you all so much. Enough to let tradition slide this year in order to keep things simpler this season. One thing is for sure. If you decide to be courageous and sane, if you decide not to overspend and overcommit and overschedule, the healthy people in your life will respect those choices. And the unhealthy people in your life will freak out. Because you're making a healthy choice that they're not currently free to make, but don't for 1 second let that stop you. I can either be fully here, fully imperfect, my messy, tired, but wholly present self, or I can miss it. This moment, this conversation, this time around the table, whatever it is, because I'm trying and failing to be perfect, to keep the house perfect, make the meal perfect, ensure that the gift is perfect. These days, I'm not trying for perfect. I'm just trying to show up every time with honesty and attentiveness. The irony, of course, must not be lost on us. It's a season that is at its heart a love story, a story about faith and fragility, angels, a baby, a star. That sweet, simply beautiful story gets lost so easily in a jarring, toxic tangle of sugar and shopping bags and rushing and parking lots and expectations. In our lowest, most fragmented moments, we feel out of control, controlled, in fact, by expectations and to-do lists and commitments and traditions. This is that season we shrug when things get a little crazy, no avoiding it. But that's not true, and it's shifting the blame. We have, each one of us, been entrusted with one life, made up with a distinct number of days and hours and minutes. We're spending them according to our values, whether we admit it or not. When things are too crazy, the only voices I hear are the voices of fear and shame. I stop being able to hear the voice of God, the voice of rest, the voice of hope and healing and restoration, the voice that gives new life to old dry bones. What I hear instead is that old song that I've been hearing all my life. You're not good enough. You're not good enough. But that voice is a lie. And it's a terrible guide. When I listen to it, I burn the candle at both ends and try to light the middle while I'm at it. The voice of God invites us to full, whole living, to rest, to abundance, to enough, to say no more, to say I'm going to choose to live wholly and completely in the present instead, even though this ragged, run-down person I am right now is so far from perfect. Let's be courageous in these days. Let's choose love and rest and grace. Let's use our minutes and hours to create memories with people we love instead of dragging them on one more errand or shushing them while we accomplish one more seemingly necessary thing. Let's honor the story, the silent night, the angels, the miracle child, the simple birth, with each choice that we make. My prayer is that we'll find ourselves drawn closer and closer to the heart of things, the story, the beautiful beating heart of it all, that the chaos around us and within us will recede, and that the most important things will be clear and lovely at every turn. I pray that we will understand the transforming power that lies in saying no, because it's an act of faith, a tangible demonstration of the belief that you are so much more than what you do. Saying no is a tangible demonstration of the belief that you are so much more than what you do. I pray that we will live with intention and hope in this wild season and in every season, that the God who loves you will bring new life to your worn-out heart this year and every year, that you will live truly and deeply in the present instead of waiting for perfect. Do we have time for questions? Are we doing okay on time? Yeah? Okay, great. Let's take just a couple. Anything you want to talk about? Anything you heard today or last night? Anything you're kind of trying to work out in your own life or that came up in your small group? Yes?
I just find everything that you're talking about so relevant.
Oh, good.
And but I did have a question about last night. I'm really inspired by everything. I can relate almost on every point that's been on here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yesterday, when you were talking about friendship, I think as you go through different seasons in your life, I find that sometimes your friends come and go.
Mm-hmm.
And you seem to have been blessed with friendship. And I'm wondering if there was ever a time in your life where you felt sort of disappointed or disillusioned. And when you turned to God, what did you sort of say?
Mm-hmm.
And was there something in the Bible that you turned to sort of help you?
That's a great question, and I would say a couple things. I do think that I have been very blessed with extraordinary friends, and I would also say, not to minimize that at all, it is absolutely a blessing, and I thank God for the people in my life. I also put an extraordinary amount of work into those friendships. I don't mess around with friendship. I don't let things go underground. One of the things, if Annette were here, so I'm not saying something that I wouldn't say with her in the room. When people ask me a lot about my friendship with Annette. We met when I was 18, and so I've known her half my life. She's my very best friend. We've lived in the same town and across the country. And one of the things that I think makes our friendship what it is that we talk about everything. And specifically, we talk about times when we have hurt each other, or disappointed each other, and we talk about it very real time and very honestly. So we are not best friends because we've never experienced conflict. We're best friends because we have engaged very deeply and very real time in conflict, even when we're long distance. And I think culturally that's sort of a weird thing to do. If you met someone who said, my husband and I have been married for 10 years, and what's great about our marriage is we have never been in a fight. You would say, you're either crazy or you're lying, right? We acknowledge that marriage is the kind of relationship that has to have some conflict, just by its nature, by its intimacy. You're trying to kind of build a life together. I think close friendship is more like that than not. But we think that good friendships are the ones that never experience those bumps. And so not just with Annette, with other friendships, another friend of mine, 2 friends in the last year, I've had quite difficult, quite delicate conversations with. One of them, I inadvertently hurt a friend's feelings, and she had to come to me and tell me about it. I had no idea. It was totally inadvertent. I mean, it was like completely not even on my radar, and when she brought it to me, I was so thankful, because it was one of those things that I would never have understood was hurtful to her. But she brought it to me. It was hard for her to do. I apologized. I asked a lot of questions about what else was going on. What was I not understanding? How can I do it better next time? Our friendship is stronger for it. I have another friend who she hurt my feelings. I felt like she was avoiding me. I felt like she was not I kept reaching out to her and she wasn't connecting with me. And finally I just said, like, I just need to let you know this has hurt my feelings. What's going on right now? And what she told me was that there was a really painful situation in her life, had nothing to do with me, but it was causing her to isolate and pull away from people that she knew would ask kind of deep questions. So I was so thankful that I had asked, because it wasn't about me at all. I was getting all like sensitive, like, oh, it's because she thinks I'm fat, you know. It was nothing to do with me. And I had no way of knowing otherwise that there was this really painful situation in her life that I was going to miss out on because she hadn't yet figured out the way to invite me into it. And so I would say the one very important thing, is that the illusion that the best friendships are the one where there's never conflict is a very unhelpful illusion. The best friendships are the kind where when conflict presents itself, you enter into it honestly, real time, deeply, privately. I think that can be a really transforming thing. And even, like when I talked about the story with my friend Christy last night, that was kind of our moment. Like, it was kind of funny. This is, like a little kind of window into publishing. So you write your story the way you want to write it, and then you have to send it to your friends and ask them how they want it said, and they send it back. So I wrote it, frankly, just behind the scenes, Christy absolutely yelled at me. She yelled at me in her kitchen, raised her voice, looked at me like she was going to kill me, terrified me. And she's like this big, so she wasn't really going to kill me, but it was like a moment, like I was like, ah. Well, I didn't feel right writing that. Like, I'm not going to say that in a book. So I made it sound a little bit like she got kind of teary and forceful, kind of. Well, then I sent it to Christy, and Christy was like, I love it. This is so touching. It means so much to me. It's a story about my mom, and she said, I do, just for the sake of honesty, I yelled at you, and you know that. So I feel like you're painting me in an overly generous light. And I was like, well played. You're exactly right, I am. But she was it was one of the most terrifying situations in her life, and I was trying to enter into it, admittedly poorly, and she yelled at me because her life was in total chaos. And that's totally okay. But when I think about my friendship with her, that was the moment where we went into another kind of friendship. I don't hold that against her at all. I'm so thankful that she allowed me into the intimate, messy part of her life. And so I do think friends go in seasons. I think there are some friends that are forever, and there are some where you really connect well for a particular season because you're working together, because your kids are the same age, whatever. I think there are 2 really different kinds of friendships. Annette and I are going to be friends forever. There are a couple people in my life right now where I'm so connected to them and I'm so thankful for them. But probably if we were to move states or if our kids were to be in dramatically different seasons, we wouldn't maintain that similar intimacy and connection. That's okay. But I would say friendship takes so much more work than we think. We know that we have to work on our marriages. We know that. We know that it takes time and dates and honesty and intimacy and hard conversations and more time. We don't always acknowledge how much work you have to put in to have really extraordinary friendships. The people who have really good friends are people who put a lot of time and work into friendship, and I would say it's never wasted. Friendship is so valuable. What it gives back to you, I would say friendship and creativity are the same. They cost something. You have to put a lot in. what they both give back to you is exponentially valuable. It seems like you're too busy. I have an acquaintance, I guess not a friend, apparently, because she said, in this season I just don't really have time for friendships. I thought, really? To me, that's like I don't have time for oxygen. To me, I can't make it through this season any other way. There's no way I could make it through this season with little kids, through this season of kind of a challenging career path. They are the things that keep me sane and keep me grounded and keep me going. And so I would say one thing I'm very passionate about is on the list, put 1 million things on the list of things you don't do. Don't mow your lawn, skip yoga, put any number of things on that list of things you don't do. Put time and energy into friendships because it's exponentially valuable. And God will transform you as you enter into transforming friendships. I'm ranting and raving at this point. I'm sorry about that. I'm very excited. I hope that's helpful. So yeah. Any other questions? I promise not to yell. Again, I'll amp it down a little bit. Yes.
How do you balance when you're taking the things that you don't do? And part of that is boundaries. And part of that is helpful things. And not how deep you'll go with friends, but in the context of the life that you have to spend, and the time that you have.
Yeah.
Have you ever encountered and how do you handle the friend because of the need that's there, the vacuum?
Yeah.
When you can't fill it,
Yep.
and the anger that emerges,
Totally.
and the backlash of then you're not a good friend.
Totally. Yes.
How does that?
I totally get it. I have, one of the things I had to do at a certain point is I had to focus on the idea, the phrase I use for it is the home team. There is a pretty small, pretty tight group of people, a couple of my family members and a couple friends that are on my home team. I am committed to them day and night, all the time. I'm in it for the long haul. And if they were to go to, if Annette, for example, were to go through a situation where she needed, use Christy as an example. She has needed an extraordinary amount this year. She's been traveling a lot to see her mom. She's been a little bit emotionally messy, which is totally understandable. They have needed a little bit of extra help with childcare. She has required more this last year than she has in other seasons. But I am on her home team and I'm happy to pay it. However, there is an endless supply of people who would like that from us. And part of, I believe, to a certain extent, it comes down to trusting God to meet people's needs. I am committed to act on God's behalf for a pretty distinct group of people. I am committed to trust him to send people to work on his behalf for another group of people. It's super hard. And people will not take that well. It's very difficult. I've had some of those very hard conversations where I've had to say the words, you are asking me to meet a need that I am not able to meet in your life. Here are some resources. I would like to help you find a counselor. I would like to recommend this book. I would like to recommend these 2 or 3 people in our church community that might be able to walk with you well through this season. I am not that person. Those are hard, very unpopular conversations. People will tell you that you're not a good Christian. They'll tell you that you're not, any number of things. That's manipulation. And I believe, I'm getting all ranty again. I just feel so strongly about this. We are called to pour ourselves out, completely empty for a certain group of people. We are not called, Anne Lamott has the most fabulous line, the day that she woke up and realized she was not the flight attendant for the planet, that it was not her job to make sure we all had beverages and snacks and blankets. I think that's a really good way to put it. Our culture tells women and tells Christians that that's our job. It is our job to be need meters, to forsake our own needs so that everyone else has snacks and blankets. That's true. I am going to sacrifice for my children, for my husband, for my parents, for a couple other friends. And everyone else, I'm going to practice trusting that God can meet their needs better than I can. I'm going to trust that there is a home team for them. And I'm going to find appropriate ways to help them find that team. But there is a finite amount of energy. And there are some people who will demand you to spend it. It's not their job to tell you how to spend that energy. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's a super tricky thing. I totally get it. What else? Yes?
I'm not sure about this question, but how do you go about, you're making me realize how I have not been investing in the friends that I want to be investing in. Mm-hmm. How do you go about really making that happen in little ways so it doesn't become this overwhelming mess? So, I don't know if
I would say it works differently for every person. There are a couple things that work well for me. And they're kind of two opposite things. I have a kind of crazy travel schedule, so I'm not around for a lot of normal stuff, which is totally fine. What works really well for me are set meeting times and expectations. So my best girlfriends in Chicago were in a cooking club together. And it's actually this kind of wonderful, circuitous story. We started meeting together to cook, and then they ended up becoming this really significant community in my life. Like, they're like my people. They're like my cry together, go to the hospital together. Yeah, I mean, they're like it for me. And I think some of what got us there is that we decided to meet together once a month. Doesn't sound like very much, but with as fast as our weeks and months go, once a month is a lot. And so for me, I'm not great at like, hey, maybe every 2 weeks or so our families should get together for dinner. 6 months from now, I will maybe get that scheduled. But because there's a standing expectation of the cooking club once a month, that has really helped me. I have found that what we have created together just once a month in 3 years is really something else. And so I would say, and then because of that, what I observed in that is my husband and I said, we've got to start a small group. We have to get together with a couple other couples, and it has to be a standing date. For whatever reason, we're not good at that, like, we should get it on the calendar sometime. We just don't. And the time passes, and pretty soon it's been a year and you haven't seen each other. So the standing date really works well for us. So that's my one thing. The other thing is texting and email. So my friend Christy, who I just adore, she works for Motorola. She has this like super bonkers job. She's like somewhere in a different city all the time. I have not seen her face probably in a month. But we text almost every day, just little stuff. How are you? What city are you in? Where did you eat? How's Elsa doing? Does Matt need anything with Elsa? Because I'm home this week, you know. And so texting has allowed us to stay real-time connected, even though we don't see each other very often. Annette and I work really hard on that too. We do, visits for us are really important. We schedule phone dates, and then we email and text back and forth a lot. And sometimes it's big stuff, like I want to tell you this big thing that's going on in my life. And sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, I got a new lipstick, I had to tell you. But those little things, the little texture of connection feels really important to me. I found I'm not traveling as much as I used to, but I did a book tour when Bittersweet came out, and it was really busy, and it was really intense, and I was gone so much. And I realized that I got a little too lonely and a little too isolated, because even when I was home, I needed to see my kids, I needed to see my husband, I needed to do laundry, I needed to sleep. So I never saw my friends. And what I finally started doing is I started using text to stay connected. I would say like, hey, Jory, I'm in Houston and I'm feeling so super lonely. I wish you were here. There's this great Mexican restaurant and I know how you love shrimp tacos. And she would text back, oh, well, I'm at home and we just went out to breakfast and it made me think of you. And the reaching out to stay connected in little daily ways has really helped me. Instead of saying, well, I haven't even seen her for 2 weeks. When we get on the phone, we'll have too much to talk about. I don't even have time to start. A 2-second text. Hey, I'm sorry I've been so busy lately. Just wanted to tell you I was thinking of you. I hope you have a great day. I find that that's so valuable in my life. So I would say what has worked for me is staying in touch in really kind of little tiny daily texty ways, and then getting things set on the calendar with an expectation that we're going to really set things aside to build this. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You just seem like you have it so together, though. Like,
oh my gosh.
I mean, because really you have to have times for your friends, time for your family, time for you being alone, time for your work. It's just...
And I would say I don't get it right most weeks, but I'm really trying.
Yeah.
And so you just give it a shot. And I think a lot of it comes down to getting clear on what it is you want your life to be about right now. So I would say if you were, and for me, I can't look at forever. Forever just makes me insane. But if this weekend, if you were to say, let's look at between now and June 15th, end of school year. What are the relationships that are most important to you? Either the existing ones or the ones that you want to build. What are some of the relationships that you need to take a couple steps back from because they're ultimately not helping you to live the kind of life you feel called to live? What are some of the activities that you so want your life to be about? What are some that you need to end in this season and maybe pick up again? For me, getting clear on that makes it really easy to make decisions in the moment. I'm committed to Christy and her husband, Matt, and their daughter, Elsa. So when they say last minute, hey, we're putting burgers on the grill, can you come? I say, yeah, because that fits in with my goals for the year. One of the things I want to be about this year is Matt and Christy and Elsa. But if it's like kind of that person that my husband went to college with and we sort of live near them and every so often we see them at church and they're like, hey, we're putting burgers on the grill. We're like, oh my gosh, that sounds so fun. We need a little family time, but we'll see you at church soon. So hard to do, but it's getting easier the more you do it. And this is another thing. This sounds kind of nitpicky, but it's really a big deal, at least for me. I'm working harder on being honest with my language. So if I see someone at church and I say, it's so great to see you. What I used to say is, it is so great to see you. We should totally get together. We should get together every week. That would be great. I would love that. We should go walking together. Well, then, what happens? Then that person says, Shauna would like to get together with me every week. And then when I don't schedule that, I have wronged that person because I set up that expectation. So I'm working hard on saying things like, it is great to see you. Nothing else. Right here, it is great to see you, you know? It's hard for me because it sounds like if it was really great, wouldn't you want to see me again? So I have to say, man, I love that our kids are in the same Sunday school class. It's so fun to see you at church every so often. How are things going? Instead of, also, we should do this and this and this and this. And a lot of that, we communicate that through our language. I have inadvertently set expectations that put me then in a position to disappoint people. And then I don't want to disappoint people, so I do it. And so then I end up like so crazy busy with people I don't like. Not good. And to be totally honest, I'm sure there are a million people that don't like me and don't want to spend time with me. And so I just trust that lady who I just do not want to be with anymore, there are other people who are going to love to be with her. And by God's grace, there are people who love to be with me. And it all works out in the end. But those are hard choices. And I don't get it right a lot of the time, but I'm learning. I'm working on it. Anything else? Yes?
What were your friendships like after college, coming from a Christian college to then, at least my experience has been having gone after graduating, like all my friends are everywhere, and almost having to start fresh.
Mm-hmm. Wheaton. I like Wheaton. I live right by Wheaton. It is. So are you from here and you went there?
Yeah, I grew up in Santa Barbara. I started off at South Pacific, and then I transferred to Wheaton halfway through sophomore year.
Got it. And now you're back here.
Yeah.
Got it. Great. I think that it's super easy to make friends at college, whether it's a Christian college or not. It's you have nothing else to do. Remember how we thought we were so busy? And it was like, I'm so busy because I have class from 10 to 10:50. And no babies trying to go potty with me. But it's like an incubator for great friendships. It's like a good kind of petri dish where they just grow like crazy. And then the rest of life isn't like that. And so post-college, you have to put very specific, very intentional energy into building friendships. Then you're going to have to do it again if you ever move. I graduated from Westmont, went back to my hometown, and so I was in my hometown and I was working in student ministry. So we were all kind of very like-minded, we were mostly single, we were mostly the same age, really easy to make friends, and I was in my hometown. Then we moved to Grand Rapids, and I literally didn't know anyone. And Grand Rapids is a great town in a lot of ways, but one of the kind of its quirks is that most people who are there grew up there, and their family grew up there, and their family is still there. So they're not necessarily taking new applications for friendship, which is tricky. And so I learned the very hard way, again, it's like dating. If you want to be in a relationship, you have to brave the horrors and the beauty of dating. If you want to have good friends, you have to brave the horrors and the beauty of making friends. You have to be really awkward and ask people to go out for coffee. And then you have to judge if it went well enough. And then you have to ask to go out for dinner. And it's really methodical work. But I would say the biggest things are be a part of a church community that you love. My best friends have always been people that I've met in the context of church or ministry, of serving together, of doing things that we love. And then do things that you love and join the people who also love those things. The cooking club is a great example of that. I love to cook. My husband can barely make oatmeal. It's not like he and I are in the kitchen for hours together drinking wine and chopping herbs. He just doesn't care, which is totally fine. And so I said, I wonder if some of my girlfriends would get together once a month and we'll cook together this long kind of lazy afternoon. It'll be great. Those have turned into some of the most significant friendships in my life, and it starts out around doing something that you love together. My brother's best friends, he's a sailor, and he's a big motorcycle guy. So most of his friends are boaters or motorcycle guys. My dad's a sailor. Most of his best friends are sailors. And you find those people when you do the things that you love. And so I think to just dive into the things that really fill you up, that make you happy, that you love, and you will find like-minded people along the way, and they'll, kind of surprise you along the way. But it takes a lot of effort. It doesn't happen on its own. It's like something you have to put on your to-do list, like make a friend, start with coffee. I think we think it's going to happen on its own, and it generally doesn't. All the way in the back.
This kind of touches back to yesterday, but what happens if, or I don't know if you've ever experienced this, if you have a friend that doesn't allow you to enter into suffering with them? What should you do?
Yeah, I think there's two different ways to handle that. If it's a long-term friend, like I told you that I just had this friend who hurt my feelings, and when I went back to her, she kind of came back and said, like, I'm really hurting, and I didn't want to let anybody in. In that situation, she's a long-term life friend of mine, and so I pushed a little harder, a little harder, a little harder until she let me in. I would say apply gentle pressure, loving and repeated gentle pressure. If on the other hand, it's kind of a new friend that just doesn't kind of want to get to that level with you. So like when you've got a new friend, you think maybe this could be like a really good friend of mine, you go out to coffee and you share with them something about your life. Not like super deep, but like this deep. You say like, this really difficult thing happened in college and kind of broke my heart, and this is what happened, and I'm still kind of recovering from it. And if they say, oh, I kind of want a latte, then you're like, okay, we're not doing this. And you really, you say like, it was super nice to meet you, we're never doing this again. There's not enough time in the world. There's not enough time in our lives to spend time with people who don't want to live on a deep level. There's just not time. If that's what you want. If you want to live on a deep, honest level, and that person clearly shows you like, do you watch Bachelorette? We're done here. I don't have time for this. Totally fine. That's what you have in-laws for. I'm not supposed to say that because we're taping. Oh. I only say that when we're not taping, but shoot. But there are people, so I think what you want to do is if they're a long-term life person, you want to apply gentle pressure. And sometimes, I'll say like, hey, this is what I think is going on. I think there's something really broken. And I think you are deciding not to let me into that. But I know it's there, and I love you no matter what. And no matter how dark, no matter how ugly, no matter how fragmented, I'm going to be there. So you just decide when we're going to talk about this together. If, however, it's a person who just demonstrates that they don't kind of want to be a super honest friend, find somebody else, because life's too short and friendship is too beautiful to miss out on it just chatting about silly stuff. Yeah. Okay. We'll have time for to do more questions later maybe. But right now, Aaron and Carrie are going to come up and we're going to sing together. And then, will you let them know when it's time to leave?
We're just going to let you, we don't want to ruin your solitude time and small groups are at noon. So what we're going to do is we're just going to, if you guys want to kind of just bow your heads while we're singing. And at a moment when you've had a chance to sort of settle your heart, just feel free to walk out.
Great.
So,
can I pray for us for that time?
Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pray for us, and then whenever you're ready, if you want to stay in here and let the music be something that kind of ushers you into that solitude time, if you want to like scoot straight out, totally fine. If your life is like mine, this is a very rare thing that's about to happen. True, total solitude. It's not that easy to find in my normal life. So I would challenge you to open yourself as deeply as you can bear right now. To listen, to be honest with yourself, to think through the things in your life that might need to be shifted or adjusted, to ask God to be gracious and clear with you about the things that this next season might need to hold. So I'm going to pray for that time together. God, thank you for the gift that it is to gather together and to be honest and to laugh and to tell stories and to talk about the really beautiful and really challenging parts of our everyday lives. We know that you made every part of it and you care about every part of it. God, I pray for every woman in this room in a very specific way, that you would use this time in a specific and important way in their lives. I pray that each one of us would be courageous, that we would open ourselves very deeply, that we would be honest even to the things that we might not want to face about ourselves or about our lives, that we would invite you into those places to heal them and bring them out in the light and repair them, that you would give us a sense of resolve to listen to your Spirit wherever you're leading us. Thank you again for the gift that it is to be in this place. It's in your name that we pray.
Ocean Hills at its best is when we are in it together.